All right, can y'all see? Does this look like it's in presentation mode to you? No,
Mhm.
presentation mode. Slideshow. There we go. All right. So this is the second webinar in our six-part webinar series on water and tax abatements. And I'll let Angel kick us off a little bit.
Thanks, Allison. So, yeah, hello everyone. Thanks so much for being here today. Like Allison said, this is the second series of tax abatement um, sessions in this full webinar series. So, I think all of you may know me. But again, I'm Angel Joy. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Permian Gulf Coast Coalition Coordinator, PG or PGCC for short, made up of member groups and frontline community advocates who are feeling the impacts sourced from the Permian Basin across the supply chain of harmful industry and into their homes. Um, so members of the coalition are the ones who helped bring this whole series together with the hopes that we can engage many of you who we have seen on past calls, all here today if you are not already, in helping strengthen the plans that we currently have to organize around tax abatements and unlimited access to all of our water sources that big companies have. So by the end of this full webinar series, we hope to provide you all with background information and context to make you feel comfortable and confident in plugging in with us on this work, as well as envision alternatives for your home and communities that surpass the confines of the status quo that we've been subjected to by the powers that be, which we'll do a little bit of today. So once again, thank you for being here. And just a few notes on tech for today. Today's meeting is being recorded. Any AI note takers or robots will be removed, and the chat is enabled for you today, but please be respectful with your comments. Any disruptive behavior will result in removal from the call. And if you do happen to drop a question in the chat, there might be a chance that we don't see it. So if you can, hold off on those, but also I will try to be monitoring the chat as much as possible. And I'll go ahead and pass it over to the presenters for today.
Thanks, Angel. So we're here talking about tax abatements. In our first webinar, we gave an overview on what each of those what are tax abatements, tax breaks, or tax exemptions, or more what they're called in Louisiana, and talked in detail about some of the specifics and some of the specific harms to communities, some of the specific decision makers. Um, Today, we're going to talk about how can you actually get your communities educated on this? How can you really change the narrative, change public understanding? What are some of the hurdles, especially some of the hurdles we've seen in Louisiana, where the system is particularly opaque, although it is opaque in Texas as well? And how do you really move people to care about this issue and start organizing on this? So we'll talk about a little recap of some of the different policies and programs, how to find some of the information you need, or what to do when you can't find that information, building relationships, communicating across the aisle, hosting workshops, and then have a little bit of a discussion and share some available resources. We have with us today Jennie Birkholz with Coastal Watch Association and Jack Green with Rise St. James. So they will both be chiming in on this presentation, and I'm super excited that, yeah, that we're all here together and really appreciate Jennie and Jack's work on this. Um, a super quick recap on the different tax abatement programs. And to be completely honest with you, I need to quickly look at my notes on this to make sure I've got all the details correct. So I am going to shift out of presenter mode here. Um, Screen sharing again. I'm so sorry. Am I, wait, resume screen share?
We still see your screen.
You see my whole screen? You still see the presentation?
Mhm.
Oh, perfect. Great. Thank you. Okay. So some of the different tax abatement programs in Texas, which we talked a lot about on our first webinar in the series, but some folks weren't able to make it. We have industrial district agreements that happen at the city council level. So city councils say this is an area where companies that are investing here don't have to pay taxes. They make reduced rate payments, but they're far lower than what the taxes would be. And they're also exempt from zoning and permitting requirements. So um, local budgets are taking the hit here. Chapter 312 is the Property Redevelopment Act. So this is another instant where city councils, county commissions, and local taxing units can designate a reinvestment zone. So they say in this geographical area, we want more industry coming in because it, quote, creates jobs, right? That narrative. And they exempt those companies from paying their fair share of taxes. So again, either the city or the county, whoever designates that zone, is taking a hit because their budgets aren't actually collecting that tax revenue. Chapter 313, this one is decided by independent school districts, and there was actually a huge and successful campaign by faith-based groups in Texas a few years ago to get Chapter 313 removed. So it is off the books, except those tax abatement schedules last 10 years. And so they're still getting those companies are still getting those tax breaks through 2030 or 2031. But the independent school districts are limiting the value that companies are paying, the taxable value of companies within school districts. And actually, the money that those school districts aren't bringing in gets redistributed. So the state is still covering those gaps. And so it's not just the counties with heavy industry that's losing the money, it's anybody across the state. So the whole state is suffering for decisions that are made at the local level in places maybe far away from them. After 313 got overridden due to amazing organizing efforts, our favorite Texas state legislature basically brought it back with JEDI, which is the Jobs and Economic, oh, what does it stand for? Jobs and Investment program. And so it's also voted on by the ISD, and it has a similar structure with the state reimbursements. And there's actually a couple of provisions under JEDI where it's not even as beneficial in terms of job creation requirements. So, or the job creation requirements aren't even there for companies to get this exemption. Louisiana has a totally different or a somewhat different structure, which we're going to talk about more with Jack here in a minute. The Industrial Tax Exemption Program, or ITEP. There's also been some amazing organizing efforts by faith-based groups and other organizing groups to get ITEP amended, and that has not passed yet in Louisiana. So it's still there. Under ITEP, new manufacturing investments get tax breaks over 5 or 10 year schedules. And Governor Landry, of course, consolidated the power to the state level. So while there's some local decisions over, some local ability to weigh in, ultimately the state is making that decision. There's also a quality jobs program that is supposed to bring in jobs, and the state is basically just giving corporations rebates for those jobs. And that program did sunset in 2025. And there's some legislation to bring it back, but we haven't seen that yet. So there is your quick overview. I am going to bring myself back into full screen sharing mode again. Thank you for bearing with me on the logistics here. Um, and I'll hand it over to Jack for the next slide.
Thank you so
Am I,
much, Allison. Hey, everybody. Oh, we lost the
do we get it? Wait, stop
while they're
sharing.
getting it up. Hey, y'all. My name is Jack Green with By St. James. And so I'm going to be chiming in and taking y'all through a little bit of my journey learning about the industrial tax exemption program in Louisiana. I also have some knowledge on the quality jobs program, so that if anyone has any questions about that, like I can, fill you in on the side, or we can get that at the end. But foremost, we're going to get into the ITEP program because that's kind of, like Allison said, the quality jobs program is sunsetted, and the ITEP program is the kind of the major industrial tax break program in Louisiana right now.
Yeah. And I'm so sorry. I don't know how many times in my life I've screen shared, but I've lost the tab. Like, My apologies for this. 1 second. There it is. Okay. 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 1 second. Share. There you go. You
All
see it
right.
again?
We do. Could you put it in presentation mode?
Yeah. There you go. Sorry about that.
Amazing. Okay, great. So the ITEP program, to give a little, bit of context on what it was 10-year, now it is a 5-year uh, exemption up to 80% on property taxes paid by an industry. And so one of the first, when we were thinking about, ways to campaign against industries that we're trying to build in our community, and also to get some kind of retribution for the industries that are currently polluting with no oversight, we looked into the finance and how they're, not only getting their finances together, but also taking away from our local parish finances. And so the first thing we kind of figured out was like, all right, what's the process look like? So in order to accept an ITEP application, an application is received to Louisiana Department of Economic Development, which then creates a conversation with whatever local parish entities need to be involved, which for Louisiana includes the parish council, the school board, and the sheriff. So those make up the local ITEP committee that plays a role in this process. Prior to Governor Landry's administration, that local committee used to have a consent-based recommendation for ITEP. So once the application was received, it would go to the local committee, and it still does go to the local committee to be discussed and for them to take a vote of the three entities on whether or not they want it. It's just now that is only a recommendation. It is no longer something binding that has any power once it leaves the local level. That's done simultaneously with a statewide workers' compensation entity within the state government. Once those two groups make their recommendations, it goes back to the Board of Commerce and Industry, which is a subsidiary of the Department of Economic Development in Louisiana. And that board is actually the one that has the full ability to approve or deny the ITEP application. They receive really, when you look at the meetings, they receive about 20 or 30 per meeting. They meet every few months. And it'll say, what industry and what the local parish says. Frankly, from what we've seen, regardless of what the parish says, they end up passing all of them. We have not seen them yet in this administration fail an ITIP exemption based upon a parish's recommendation. But we've kind of been considering like what it would look like to organize in collaboration with the parish, and if you were able to get all the parish entities on your side and bring people to the meeting, would that change? Would that change the result? We just haven't seen that yet, that level of organizing yet on a major decision. And then finally, from that, the final approval goes to the governor. And one of the other changes that I wanted to highlight that's been made is there used to be a jobs guarantee with the ITEM exemption. There had to be like a certain threshold of new jobs that would be created for them to receive that, but that's also been cut. Next slide. And so, yeah, I just wanted to go through a little bit of how we went about finding out information through a very intentionally opaque system. And so, first and foremost, something important, for all of us organizers is identifying who the decision makers are in question, whether they're having a recommendation or the full consent for the program, like who's at the table and where is the table even. So for the local level, that is the parish officials, the parish council, the school board, and the sheriff's office. I don't know what it's like in Texas, but those three don't meet in a traditional open meeting. So finding out when and where those discussions are had is also kind of a struggle and a battle. If you have a good relationship with one of those entities, they'll be able to fill you in on the task. If you're in a county or a parish where those are hostile to your organization and your causes, then it might be a little bit more of a struggle, sending in information requests and FOIAs. And then the state level, it's regularly whatever economic development office that exists, and the governor in Louisiana's case as well are both major decision makers on this. To be able to get any information on it at all in Louisiana, FOIA requests for both the state and the parish level to be able to find out if an application has been received, because we really don't find out in a public facing way whether an ITEP exemption is being considered until it's on the agenda for the Board of Commerce and Industry and already passed through the local level. So be able to know if your officials are having that discussion, an information request has to happen really early on. If you know an industry is coming, you know that that's kind of when we would act on that situation. And then I wanted to highlight some existing resources that can be helpful for both Louisiana and other contexts. So for Louisiana, great information on the ITEP program and studies that have been done, being Together Louisiana and Opportunity Louisiana. That they both have ITEP portions of their website, and they've done a lot of good work. And then for anybody, I wanted to highlight an organization that helped us a lot when we were trying to figure this stuff out, which is Good Jobs First. On their website, they have a list of different trackers for, and these are kind of this on the side of the screen. You can see some of them, but they have them broken down by subsidies and tax breaks, and you can look by like the parish level or the city level. I will say that they have done a lot more work within cities, and so that's where the information is more robust. We're kind of having conversations now of how we can extend that knowledge into more rural areas. But what they told me is that all you really have to do is look up your local parish and school board budgets and see where, like, look up subsidy, look up tax breaks, and see the specific amounts that they lose every year on their budget. And you can add those numbers up yourself if Good Jobs First doesn't have it together. Next slide. And then finally, before I pass it over, just, in a very, very frustrating landscape like Louisiana, where we can try our best, but there's no really clear guaranteed ways to get policy wins on this right now in the current state of things. The best thing to do is just to be able to educate your community members and your local government bodies as to what's actually happening here. A lot of times, the state and the governor will just come in and tell the parish, just follow along the rules, just listen and say yes to what we do, and everything will be fine. But they don't really realize until things have already happened how much money they're losing out to these subsidies, and how much the local parishes and the facilities are suffering. So sharing that knowledge, making knowledge power, and being able to transfer that into some kind of action and next steps for the community is really all that matters in that kind of situation. And so, yeah, thank you all for this time. And I am now going to pass it on for the next presenter to pick up.
Great. Thank you so much, Jack. That was such an amazing overview, and you're just really a wealth of knowledge. And so, if folks are interested to really dive in more on the specifics of things in Louisiana, you can reach out to Jack directly. He can go ahead and drop his email in the chat. And, I know folks who want to dive in, I'm sure he has a lot more to share. I'm going to pass it on to Jennie with Coastal Watch Association in Southeast Texas and my colleague Rodney Brown at Earthworks to talk more about what does that community education actually look like. So we know that it takes people power. We also know that these systems can be really opaque and hard to figure out what's going on. As Jack shared, there's not a lot of information. And so educating communities proactively, getting people organized and educated up on the issue ahead of time is really essential. And so how we actually do that, the nuts and bolts, will be what Jennie talks to you all about.
Thank you. So glad to be here and appreciate all of your partnership and all the learnings that we get from everybody. It's wonderful to have that. I want to start with this is not about data, right? And it's a question that is underneath everything in all of our communities. And it's what happens when $500 million flows through a community and no one asks the residents what they want. And that happens a lot. And that happens with in San Patricio County, which is where this particular work happens. And what we know is that confusion is a tactic. And that is not by accident, in systems of oppression. They use things to overwhelm you, to disassociate, and misinformation for tools, and they're not features. These they're not bugs, but they are features. And so when we take very detailed information, when we grab information from 5 different resources and skim through city council meetings and all of those sorts of things, that is an act of resistance. Clarity is resistance. And if that's your skill set, thank you. Thank you. You don't need to go out and protest. You can bring this data to us, and we love you. And so we can keep coming back to that, but we want to break this down for our community, and we are stronger. There are more of us than there are of the system. And when we talk about our methodology, that's why we'll say that community is the antidote to confusion. And the methodology and the way that we do this is really important and critical. So next slide. And we'll talk more about this community piece because oftentimes it's hard to do deep work with people that are different from us. And different from us oftentimes is our ideologies, different hats, different ways of voting, and our automatic assumptions about these people. But ultimately, we are, each one of us, intricately woven into others. And so oftentimes I talk about when working in communities, I'm a network weaver. I'm weaving the community together. And the more dense we are, the more able we are to go through crises. And next slide. Rodney can talk a little bit about how it is so critical in this work when you walk into a room doing tax abatements to not bring in your own assumptions of how people are going to relate to that. So, Rodney?
Yes, no, thank you so much for the introduction, Jenny. Again, my name is Rodney Brown. I am the Texas Gulf Coast campaigner with Earthworks, and I'm based out of San Antonio. And I've had the incredible pleasure of working alongside a bunch of folks on this call. But today I'm going to talk about my specific work with Coastal Watch Association and just like combating a collaboration between two um, two like industry giants, Yaren as well as like Enbridge for a blue ammonia facility in the community of Ingleside. And so again, like the just like demographic and makeup of Ingleside on the Bay is like a conservative rural community. And so I think initially, like when we hear that, especially in a place like the South or Texas specifically, we think like, okay, like this is a lost cause. These are people that we can't engage. And so from just like our work through town halls, through canvassing, and just like very like human and one-to-one interactions, we've learned that people across the Gulf Coast talk about conservation and protecting their environment in different ways. Where there may be some people who join this fight to stop the impact of like global warming, climate change. Others may focus on preserving local waterways for recreational fishing, as well as like the economic impacts of these facilities through tax abatements. And so for us, it was our role to find alignment by identifying just like the individual's self-interest in protecting their environment. And as we know, in conservative rural communities or just like communities in general, you can find that alignment from interrogating how tax dollars are being spent. And so that's what we uplifted and utilized for Coastal Watch Association's Ammonia Town Hall series. We focused on just like the foregone revenue in San Patricio County, which I want to say was almost like 940 something million dollars. And you can go to the next slide.
Yeah, so again, I'm going to harp on community because without community, there's no liberation, and that means the whole community and industry will bank on these tax abatements, and they bank on that the shared value is job creation, and that the shared value is people want high-paying jobs and in the factory. And so our job is to find out what the real shared value is in the community. And if we go in with the assumption that the shared value is conservative values, then you miss the mark, right? And so I challenge you to come in, and you as a facilitator, you have to become a facilitator. You really are the doula of this group. You are the caretaker. You are the guider of, if you want to get weird, you're the guider of the birthing of this movement, right? And you're looking for the emergence of where the energy is here. And so the communities deserve better than what they are getting. And it is up to us to kind of see where they want that to go. And the space of where we do this is not putting up with people, right? Not just tolerating them, but bundling these relationships together. And how can we build trust? And that starts with not judging and trying to find those shared values. And we'll do next. Okay, so as we go into this facilitation, I will say these are the key things that I look at. It's a participatory process. I know this today, right now, really isn't. It's hard, but you want people active and involved and not just presenting a bunch of numbers. And you want the process is what you're doing. That's the most important thing. So when you go in to this facilitation, you should not say, my goal is to have a report that we're going to send to city council. Absolutely not. Your goal is to be with the community, to bite-size down this information and let them play with it and see what happens, right? Failing forward is wonderful, right? You are breaking systems that were put in place and things that you have done. So embrace that if you do wrong, and then rehabilitate imagination. So just Q&As, answers and questions and those sorts of things aren't going to bring the imagination that we need in order to dream differently for our communities. And so art, tangible things, and you go as far as your community itself can do. Some communities, even talking to each other is hard. Other communities break out the whole craft closet, right? And that's part of you knowing your individual community. And again, radical clarity. So I say a concept like this is a concept today. This is a concept of what you're teaching people, what this is, or what I'm asking, here. It can be used to build a courthouse of reason. So they may build a system or a process, or they could throw it through the window. So a complete rebellion and break it down. So, and your job is to just follow the will. All right, next. So this is what we were dealing with. Our friends at the Texas Campaign for the Environment were wonderful enough to have a report. It was a very long report and very complex. And it did show us how much foregone revenue was in this area. So $47 billion. This is a EJ area. Very poor, not one healthcare facility in town. Their volunteer fire department, so not even funded that way. They flood whenever there's a rain. Just, at that point. This was 171% equal to that of their annual county budget. So this is it may not look that much, but it is. It's a significant amount for them in this area. We also had information on, given how many jobs that they had promised, right, and what that job would need to pay. We had a bunch of detailed information on what line item in the county budget that could be associated with. So lots and lots of details on the tax abatements. Our job was to figure out how to present this to the community and how it would mean something to them and not be overwhelming. And Rodney was helpful with that. So we'll do next. And this is also kind of what was going on. This is what Rodney told us, right? We have the new ammonia plant. They come in and they say, we have jobs and your community is going to prosper, right? And we have that prosper word. We always hear that. We also had the Economic Development Board coming in, and they had proposals for new zoning and industrial buildouts. And they were going from city council to city council and saying, this is what we need you to rezone, and these are the industries that will benefit that we think you should bring in, and the jobs that we can bring in. And then we have the water crisis happening. And all of this was converging, and we're trying all these different tactics. And then we get this report, and we're saying, oh, bingo, we need the community to drive the conversation, as opposed to industry driving it and this economic development board driving it. And so we said, we got to protect what we love. And we came together, and this is what we did with the tax abatement. And so we'll do next. All right. So Rodney and I came up with this concept called a better billion.
Did you
Go
want
ahead.
me? Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. Okay. Awesome, awesome, awesome. And so yes, again, to highlight the billions and like foregone revenue, we thought this would be a wonderful opportunity to flip the power back into the hands of community members because, a lot of times we say like, hey, we don't want our taxpayer dollars going toward this, but are we not only just like offering a solution, but moving community members through that process. Again, a lot of these are counties, municipalities that elect city council. They elect the individuals who have the power to approve or deny a permit. And so we want to empower them to begin like speaking out in support of like what they want and how they want their tax dollars spent. Um, and so we use this activity. We got these little fuzzy balls. I want to say we had about like 1,000 of them and each ball like represented $1 million. We had just like a huge sheet of construction paper. Um, and again, just like the categories community members picked, these weren't things that we said like, hey, you should care about hospitals or you should care about the fire department. These were community programs or social programs that they felt like they may have been lacking, needed improvement, or just like didn't exist at all. And so it's like you can see there are fuzz balls for the fire department, there are fuzz balls for a community garden. There are not just fuzzballs, millions. Like community members want millions of dollars like invested into these programs. There's even 1 million for a yoga center. And again, it's just like thinking about the impact of these programs on communities that may have like been impacted or have like health impacts due to like the overwhelming presence of industry. Yes, a home insurance trust fund. Like there's so many different ways that that money could be utilized as opposed to giving it to industry. And like something before we move on that I want to highlight is that a dirty trick that Project Yarn was using is they created a food pantry in the community. And so it looks like, hey, like the industry, they're doing these charitable or philanthropic um, things when in actuality it's that like hey the community is losing resources and if it had those tax abatements if there was a like equitable dispersal of like profits the community wouldn't need a food pantry but thank you for that next slide.
Yeah,
Did the
so
next slide go?
yep, it's
Great.
good.
Okay, great.
This is kind of you'll see our process, right? We inform. So Rodney and I, give this clear, digestible, relatable data, and even like how many teachers, this is one data point that he did, how many teachers would this pay for, right? Given the average salary. How I can't remember what some of the other things were, but it wasn't just like this is how much you're losing. It's like this is what you could have, like an example of that, being very tangible about what that is. And that was a lot of good aha moments. So, giving them this data, you're able to see like, that hit with them, or that really hit them. You see their reactions and what went well and what didn't. Um, and we kept that part pretty brief and then just kind of sent them to their tables. And this is where the group work was really important because they started working together and talking about, oh, well, we gave them the exact amount of money that would be the total amount missed out on and said, go dream big. What do you want in your community? Before that, we said, hey, by the way, since Chenier came in and since Gulf Coast Ventures came in, has your community gotten better? Just a real quick question. And they're like, no. Oh, okay. Well, maybe this is why. Let's go ahead and dream now. But they had a hard time spending all of the money. It was so much money, y'all. To where they were just like shoving it in categories and just spending it. But in the end, what you found is that none of them did it for jobs. None of them spent the money on jobs. None of them wanted more industry. What they wanted was teachers, libraries, community gardens, better sidewalks, healthcare, all of these things. And what new businesses they did want in was an HEB and retail. So it helped us a great deal. After this, it helped us move them into action. So we had them sign some permits, right? Hey, this is how you can, prevent the expansion of industry today. And our next town hall is this, and we'll collate this data and we'll bring it back to you. So this was our process for this particular day. Yeah. But industry does just enough for you to love them and to keep you in that poverty trap. And this really brought a lot of transparency. So we can go to the next slide. So this is what they prioritized. I'm not going to give you the exact numbers, and there's a reason why. Okay. Because the community owns the data. But this is what they prioritize: schools, teachers, healthcare, infrastructure, drainage. This is a hurricane area. And they want that drainage ditches and stuff like that. Good grief, they don't have that. They are the largest crude oil exporter in the world, and they have a volunteer fire department. They want real firefight. Not to say those people aren't wonderful, but they want a fire department. And shared community spaces. There's nowhere to get together. There's nowhere, and they want that. And so people were left happy and inspired, and we did too. So the next slide is kind of what we learned, I think. Let me see. Next slide. Yep, this is what we learned. We learned a lot from this. We really learned the community knows what they want, right? We just don't ask them enough. A lot of times we make assumptions. We think that they may care about how much money is taken from them, or that maybe they care about global warming, or maybe they care about this or that. But if you distill down all of this stuff, they care about their kids, they care about everyday life, they care about thriving, right? They care about drainage, some of these very practical things. Hearing them talk helped us find core messaging for our campaigns. and what we were going to say and some of the imagery and that sort of thing. So listening to them, the way they talk and what they talked about. We have more personal work to do as facilitators. So I had to pause because immediately I wanted to take the data and create a report and take it to the city council and say, this is what they want instead, and stop the tax abatements and blah, 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 blah. But that was extractionary. And we cannot behave the same way that industry treats us. It is our duty to do the opposite. And so we found that we have to continue to hold ourselves accountable to the principles that we have to hold in a community. And the last thing, sorry, I have, and then we dream together, right? And dreaming together in a community means also what happened before industry and what can happen. We know it can happen, and we have those shared values. People with the most conservative, extreme views were mad about the tax abatements, and it wasn't because of their tax dollars, right? It's because they love teachers or they love whatever. And so that's really the shared value there. It goes beyond the money. It goes to what are they missing out on and why does that hurt? Why does that hurt? You got to dig deeper. Okay. What is, yeah.
Thanks so much, Jenny. This was really great. It makes me want to host a workshop for sure. Who here wants to host a workshop like this? Can I get a show of hands? Maybe drop some initial reactions in the chat. I see Angel raising her hand. Great. Okay, so we have about 12 minutes left in this webinar. I don't think that's quite enough time to go into breakout rooms, and we're a small group anyway. So why don't we try to answer some of these answer some of these questions in the chat or just with the room. And if folks have their own questions, either like technical questions that have a concrete answer or conceptual questions that have many answers, you should feel free to drop those questions in the chat as well. But yeah, why don't we can kind of popcorn around. What's one new or interesting thing, maybe something you didn't know before, that really popped out to you today? I also cannot see the chat any longer, so I'm going to try and find that. Oh, there it is. Great. What's one new or interesting thing you learned? Don't be afraid. I learned that San Patricio County gives away tax abatements that are equal to 171% of their county budget. That's like almost twice what they're bringing into their budget. They're not bringing in because they're just letting corporations have those freebies. And I've been reading these studies pretty closely, and that is one of the highest counties. It's really crazy. Gina, go ahead.
Yes, I was going to say that I didn't realize how much the tax abatement is. And that really affects the community. They can't even have the simple things like drainage, places to meet. It's ridiculous. So I'm glad that you brought that to them because they maybe weren't thinking about it either. Maybe they grew up with that and they take it for granted and don't realize what they could have, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And I think what I'll say on the next one is, our next steps, but we had a new city council come in. And one of the reasons why a person ran for city council is because the roads never got fixed. She's like, these damn roads never get fixed, you know? And I was like, oh, well, speaking of, do you know how much is in tax abatements going on here? That's probably why the damn roads don't get fixed. And so we're now educating these new people coming in who don't know what's happening in the budget, and so that they can make decisions that are better and wiser.
So another question we could dive into is, and this is the way I think Jenny phrased it, what's your next most elegant step to educate your community about tax abatements? Does anybody have plans to do that community education, to, host a workshop or get those resources out there? Yeah, Angel.
Yeah, would love to hear in El Paso because we're hearing a lot about the metadata center and something that has not frequently been a topic for many people in El Paso and our talking points and whatnot is tax abatements. And Meta's getting 80% tax abatements on this data center project if it were to go through. And the 380 agreement that City Council is voting on breaking today has a lot to do with tax abatements. And I don't think a lot of people are aware of what that implication means. And so, yeah, could definitely benefit here in El Paso.
Melanie.
Hi there. Yeah, this is Melanie in Freeport, Texas. Yeah, Jenny and Rodney and Allison, that was a great presentation. I've got some new ideas. I was taking notes. And we're kind of doing something similar. Again, we from our the last Brazoria County tax abatement update study that we still haven't actually, I guess, released or put out there. It's really eye-opening, that they, in the report at least, they gave us some ideas. They looked at Brazoria County's budget, and like you all were saying, to point out, did you know if they hadn't given this amount of money to Freeport LNG, your city or your county could have had these services? But anyway, yeah, I like the way y'all did the first workshop. And I was wondering, I'd missed it, but what action items did you give them after that first workshop?
Yeah, so that is what we're doing in July. So we have launched the survey online so people can take it online and vote online. We would love, like dreaming big, we would love to have a station that we could take with us everywhere, and people could vote, at booths or, I could see a giant campaign with this so that you could do big community awareness. But right now we have an online survey. July, we're going back for a town hall and they're going to do the data meaning making. What does this mean? Y'all voted this way. This is what you prioritized. They were a bunch of socialists, by the way. um, they wanted free childcare for everybody, which was amazing, right? They love Trump too. And but what does it mean to them, right? And what do they want to do with this data? And that's the most important step for me is um yeah, how did they value it and what do they want to do with it? That's our plan for July.
Great. And I know 2 years ago when the TCE sponsored study came out here, actually we have on a Facebook site called Brazoria County Property Tax Resistance, and they invited a couple of us from Better Brazoria to come speak. I think, they're, mainly, well, conservative and Democrat, but they are realizing the connection between, hey, for decades, our government entities have been giving away all this money, and it's got to, they got to make it up somehow, have some money coming into the county budget. So, here, no matter where you live, Freeport, Pearland, our taxes go up, property taxes go up every year. And so that was one group I had never really thought of until a couple of years ago. And I got on their Facebook site, and so sometimes there's people or groups you don't think about at first partnering with, but that's one that here, the Brazoria County Property Tax Resistance Group. But you all have some great ideas. I like the ideas that you presented so far.
Yeah, James.
Yeah, thank y'all so much. This was amazing. I really liked the activity with the buckets of money, the little puff balls, and people get to choose. And I think for communities like this, especially, it sounds so familiar. It's like there's this poverty of imagination of what we could actually do if we actually had the money. And a similar, wasn't a workshop like that, but this idea of our property insurance here on the coast is unaffordable. And if we had $1 billion a year paid in like a sovereign wealth fund, we could self-insure, or those kind of ideas, like beyond just anyway. It's hard for community to get beyond just trying to survive sometimes, but I think we are there's a lot of money there that goes into the pockets of these already overstuffed pockets, corporations from elsewhere, and we can really imagine even more than free childcare. I mean, I don't know. That should be like bare minimum at this point, right? Um, anyway, I just wanted to say thank you all so much, and I think this is the piece that unites, at least here, unites all people, and we can stop left and right pointing and point to the real problem, which is extractive, exploitative systems of extractivism that the corporations have condition us to believe is the way to get jobs, and it's absolutely not, right? So, on the other thing I wanted to say is we have a new Hyundai steel plant coming, and they've gotten inventive with ways of um, uh, extracting. It's not just the property taxes that are exempted. That plant has a $300 million basically electricity that the taxpayers are going to pay for them to use electricity. And so these data centers, there's more to it than just property tax exemptions. They are reinventing the wheel of how they can screw over the communities they operate in. And yeah, we just have to raise awareness about how this is going. And thank y'all so much.
Thank you, James. I think that's very insightful. And, I want to go back to like one of the dreams that people wanted was a free yoga center. And in our group at CWA, we have somebody who does breath work and yoga as like his practice. And so we started offering Wellness Wednesdays. And every Wednesday, we now free to the community, we do free yoga. And that's how we said, you know what? You don't need industry. Sometimes you just need each other and you need to know each other. And that was one of our first like commitments. I forgot about it because it just kind of happened, right? And that's what you do. It just kind of happens. And that was the beauty of knowing what people want. You didn't have to craft a fair or whatever. Now you know. Now you know. And so um, there are lots of unlikely allies out there, y'all. And you will find that people who are you say they have jobs and they want to build these data centers, there's a resistance with extremely conservative folks. And I hate to, I'm using a label there, that are builders, and they're saying, nope, that's against my ethics. Right. And so being able to work with those individuals and finding them is going to be critical to the movement.
Thanks, Jenny and James. As we're about to hit the hour, I'll take us to our closing now and share what's coming up with you all. So again, extremely grateful to you all for attending today. This is the third in our webinar series where the next session will have us focus on water again. That's coming up on Thursday, July 25th, and no need to register again if you're already signed up. If you're here today, you're already signed up for all of them. And at the end of the full series, we'll share more information on the next phase of plugging in with the coalition and the work groups that we're setting up for these two issue areas. But if you have any questions before then, please feel free to reach out to me. And I'll drop my email here in the chat. And I really want to thank the presenters today, Allison, Jenny, Jack, and Rodney. This was amazing. I learned so much. And thank you all so much for being here. We'll see you at the next one.
Thank you all for having us.
Thanks, y'all. Bye, everyone.
Thank y'all. Take care.